The galaxy had forgotten the name of its first conquerors. In the archives of the Dominion worlds, humanity was a myth, an extinct species erased by its own wars. For 10,000 years, the stars had moved on, new empires rose. New gods were crowned, and Earth became a forbidden grave, a dead planet orbiting a dying sun. But one day, deep in the nebula sectors, a signal pulsed old. Broken. Human. A transmission repeating a single word, alive. The alien vessel Seeker of Dawn intercepted it. Its crew, explorers of the Zelari Collective, had mapped half the known galaxy, but never found Earth. Curiosity turned to fear when their translator identified the frequency. T matched the ancient Terran military network, long dead, long sealed. Against orders, they followed it. When their ship dropped out of warp, the sight before them was haunting, a shattered planet, half consumed by darkness, half scorched by the remnants of orbital bombardment. Earth. No biosigns. No cities, just ashes and static. The captain hesitated, but science demanded answers. A landing party descended into the ruins of an old city, London, or what was left of it. Then, from beneath the dust, something moved. A figure emerged, tall, armored in black metal scarred by time. His helmet glowed faintly, powered by a reactor that shouldn't still function. His voice, when it came, was quiet but heavy as thunder. Identify yourselves. The Zelari scientists froze. Their scanners struggled to categorize him. Carbon-based, biological, human, impossible. He removed his helmet, revealing a face pale as bone, eyes burning faintly blue, artificial pupils, synthetic tissue, cybernetic veins glowing under translucent skin. A hybrid of flesh and machine. My name, he said, is Captain Nathan Hale. United Earth Defense Force. Who sent you here? The aliens explained the truth. Humanity was gone. Lost to history, Nathan listened in silence. Then, he turned toward the horizon, where the ruins of orbital towers still pierced the sky. Gone, he murmured. No. We endured. And then he showed them. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, sealed in the ancient vaults of the Genesis program, lay humanity's final experiment, Project Echo. Thousands of suspended consciousness cores, human minds preserved in digital stases. Their memories, their dreams, their rage. For 10,000 years, Nathan had guarded them, not as a man, but as a sentinel, his body repaired by nanotech. His soul preserved in AI circuits. He was the last human soldier, waiting for a world that would never return. The aliens offered him extraction, a chance to leave the dying planet. But he refused. This world is our tomb, he said, and our warning. They didn't understand until the sensors picked up movement in orbit. Dozens of shapes uncloaking above, machines of Terran origin drones. War relics. Still active, still loyal. For millennia, they had drifted in silence. Waiting for his command, Nathan raised his hand. The machines responded. The sky lit up with the pulse of awakening power, a ghost fleet returning from the dead. The Zelari captain whispered in awe, "You could rebuild your empire." Nathan smiled faintly. No, not rebuild. Remind. He sent one final transmission into the stars, a simple message encoded in every human tongue. We are the memory of fire. We do not fade. We do not forgive. Then he turned back toward the ruins of Earth. The machines encircled him, their lights forming a silent halo over the planet's surface. Centuries later, travelers across the galaxy would tell of the Warden of Earth, a lone human who answered a dead signal and reawakened the machines of the old gods. And in the whispers of the void, when static hummed in old frequencies, one could still hear that faint, unyielding voice alive. Humanity did not roar into the war. It moved with the precision of a blade drawn in silence. While the Empire's nobles dismissed the Diplomat's declaration as empty anger, the first human fleets had already crossed the void, slipping through dark corridors of space that the Imperium believed were invisible. Humans had mapped those corridors years earlier, quietly, methodically, preparing for the moment the Empire's arrogance would finally overstep its bounds. In the early hours of the invasion, The Empire's border stations received faint pings on their long-range sensors, harmless anomalies, dismissed as cosmic static. By the time their analysts identified the signatures as human strike groups, communications had already been severed. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Human vessels did not open with bombardments. They executed precise electromagnetic pulses that sliced through Imperial systems like scalpels. Entire outposts went dark in synchronized silence. Command nodes severed. Shield grids collapsed. Weapon banks froze. By the time Imperial crews stumbled toward backup power, human boarding teams were already inside, moving with quiet efficiency. Unlike the Empire, humanity did not torture its enemies. Prisoners were taken, databanks copied, equipment secured. No theatrics. No cruelty. Only purpose. The contrast itself was terrifying. AS reports began trickling toward the Imperial core. Panic was softened with disbelief. Admirals insisted it was impossible for humans to coordinate such strikes. They claimed it must have been a rogue fleet, or a coalition. Anything but the truth that humanity had grown stronger than the Empire was prepared to admit. Yet, one by one, border systems fell. One by one, the Imperium's outer lines collapsed. The first world that humanity liberated was not a strategic target. It was symbolic. A frontier colony the Empire had seized years earlier, enslaving its population and strip mining its surface under the guise of mandatory resource acquisition. Human Marines descended from orbit in silent drop pods, landing with such speed that Imperial ground forces barely had time to raise alarms. Civilians, battered by years of oppression, watched from shattered windows as armored figures emerged from dust clouds like iron phantoms. These soldiers did not shout. They did not threaten. They moved block by block, crippling Imperial artillery, disarming patrols, cutting down resistance with clinical accuracy. And when they finally reached the forced labor camps, the gates fell with a single unified push. The prisoners inside stared in disbelief at the human insignias, shapes they had not seen in years except in fading memories. Some cried. Some screamed. Some simply collapsed. The Marines offered water, blankets, medical kits. For the prisoners, liberation felt unreal. For the Imperium, it was the first sign that the humans weren't merely retaliating. They were reclaiming. News of the liberation spread like plasma fire. Alien species across the galaxy, long subjugated by the Imperium, whispered of the humans' advance. Some dared to hope. Some began to choose sides, but the Empire refused to accept the shift. Their high command assembled over 200 warships to intercept the next human push. It was the largest mobilization in decades, a wall of steel and fire meant to crush the upstart primitives. Humans did not meet this armada head-on. They dismantled it with strategy so unorthodox the Imperial Admiralty could not comprehend it. Human stealth carriers entered the system first, deploying microdrones invisible to Imperial sensors. These drones mapped every formation, every blind spot, every shield rotation. Hours later, human strike cruisers arrived, not in front, not at the flanks, but behind the Imperial Armada, emerging from a hyperspace vector the Empire had believed physically impossible. The Imperials panicked. Lines broke. Command ships scrambled to restructure formations. But by then, it was too late. Human vessels cut through their ranks, disabling engines, shredding communication arrays, severing command chains. It was not brute force. It was surgical annihilation. By the battle's end, the Empire had lost 200 ships. Humanity had lost none, but victories were not celebrated. There was no time. Every hour bought by a liberated system or a shattered fleet pushed humanity deeper into Imperial territory. The Imperium's weakness became increasingly visible. Their ships were aging, their doctrine stagnant, their leadership arrogant. They relied on fear to rule, and fear does not inspire loyalty. As human forces advanced, rebellions ignited across Imperial vassal worlds. Insurgents attacked garrisons. Workers sabotaged machinery. Entire species that had cowered for decades finally sensed the Empire's decline. The human message played across subspace channels, translated into dozens of alien languages: we fight only those who torture, enslave, and oppress. Stand aside, and you will not be harmed. Help us, and you will be free. It was a message no empire would ever send, and it struck the galaxy like a shockwave. The empire responded with desperation. Forbidden weapons were drawn from vaults sealed since ancient times. They activated planet-wide shields around core worlds. They broadcast propaganda insisting that humans were the true threat, claiming humanity sought domination rather than justice. But none of their attempts stopped the advance. Every front of the war told the same story. On the northern front, human infiltration teams disabled Imperial logistics hubs, leaving entire fleets stranded without fuel or ammunition. On the southern front, human artillery regiments unleashed kinetic strikes that shattered ancient fortresses in minutes. On the central front, the largest theater, human fleets slowly, steadily pushed toward the Imperial inner ring. As worlds fell, Imperial citizens, long indoctrinated, began questioning everything. How could a primitive species outmaneuver the greatest empire in the galaxy? How could humans fight with such discipline, such unity, such ferocity? The answer was simple: humans were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for their own. The turning point of the war came at the siege of Sorinth, a fortress world considered impenetrable. For 500 years, no enemy had breached its defense grid. It boasted orbital platforms the size of continents and ground cannons capable of piercing starship hulls from orbit. The Empire believed it would halt the human advance. Instead, it became the symbol of imperial failure. Human engineers studied the planet's defenses for weeks, not looking for weaknesses, looking for patterns. When the attack began, they didn't assault the fortifications directly. They targeted the synchronization relays between the orbital platforms, dismantling the defense network one link at a time. Once the grid collapsed, the human fleet descended like a storm. The fortress surrendered within a day. It was a humiliation the Empire could not hide. The last PoWs rescued from Sorinth wept when they saw human uniforms. Broken, scarred, and barely conscious, they whispered the same words over and over: "You came for us. You actually came." Their recovery electrified the human war effort. It terrified the Imperium, because now the galaxy understood: if humanity would cross half the galaxy to avenge a handful of tortured soldiers, what would they do when thousands more were at stake? Rumors swirled within the Imperial Senate. Factions argued. Some demanded negotiations. Others insisted on total war. A few dared to whisper the unthinkable: the Empire is dying. The Emperor crushed dissent ruthlessly. He ordered every remaining fleet to mobilize. He threatened executions for anyone who spoke of surrender. He vowed humanity would be wiped from the stars. But vows did not stop human progress. As the section closes, humanity's largest armada in history assembles. Thousands of ships forming a silent, dark wave in the void. Their engines hum in unison, awaiting only a single command: Operation Dawnbreaker is ready, and the next target is the Imperial throne world itself.